Now, with more on that summit, I'm joined by Tom Vassos. Mr. Vassos is a business instructor with the Rotman School of Management. Mr. Vassos, let's begin with the tentative deal between Canada and Colombia. What more can you tell us about this and its importance to Canadians?
Well, basically, it's a free trade deal that will remove tariffs for goods going between Canada and Colombia. So it'll remove 98% of the tariffs of Canadian goods going to Colombia, for example, either immediately over the next 10 years. And we do about $1 billion of trade with Colombia, so it's not a huge amount, but it could have an impact.
You talk about leverage. If we can make this deal as we have, and I guess it still has to be ratified by the Canadian Parliament, but if we're able to accomplish this deal, this gives some sort of leverage with other countries, which will increase the impact that you spoke of as being minuscule at this point with this single lone country.
Yeah, I think it sends an anti-protectionist measure out there because actually U.S. and Colombia signed a trade deal a couple of years ago, but it still hasn't been ratified by Congress. So I think it sends a strong anti-protectionist message from Canada. I think it shows that we support free trade. And I'm not quite excited about it yet, just because once again you look at the size of the trade between the two countries at $1 billion, but I hope it's the precursor to many more free trade deals to come, right through to maybe an entire America's free trade agreement, which would really help kickstart the America's economies.
Mm-hmm. President Bush met with his Chinese counterpart in Peru. Do you believe that current financial crisis that we have going on right now will result in China being given its due recognition as a global economic power?
Yeah, I think there's already evidence where countries like China are playing a more major role in institutions like the World Economic Forum and things like that. And just the size of the Chinese economy and how fast it's growing relative to other GNP economies around the world, they're a force to be reckoned with. But China has a lot at stake here as well, because if things go bad in the U.S., China will be affected. They have trillions of dollars invested in U.S. dollars, in U.S. real estate, and their ongoing success, quite frankly, is dependent on the U.S. machine continuing to buy more goods and services.
So that would seem to counter any worry that China may want not to cooperate with this summit. In terms of coming up with an international solution to the crisis, you don't believe that they're going to try to keep their own interests in mind, therefore?
I mean, you might see pockets of that, but the reality is their interests as part of that global financial system that is now in place is really now intertwined. So I can't see a point where they would say, we're just going to go our own way and turn their backs on everybody else, because it would definitely have a detrimental effect on them as well.
I just want to touch on the fact that the other countries that are participating in this summit today, the idea, or at least part of the mission, is to convince those leaders of those countries not to throw up trade barriers. Why is that important? Why would that be a danger if they did?
Yeah, well, anyone that understands economics understands that anytime trade barriers and duties and different things like that are in place, it hampers trade and makes markets less efficient, and there's an economic price to pay for those inefficiencies. And so it's basic sound economic principles that the more we open up the markets, the more we reduce tariffs, the more the lowest price goods can reach the markets that demand those goods, the markets become more efficient and more effective, and the net result of that should be better results economically overall for many countries out there.
You've led into something, and I've only got a couple of seconds left, but it's the good news. It's the good news. The Canadian dollar is down, which increases the likelihood that there is going to be trade between Canada and other countries. Expand on that just quickly, if you will.
Well, yeah, with any major economic crisis, as we've seen, and a likely protracted slowdown around the world, slowdown being less than 3% global growth, there are some positives. I mean, if you look at our situation here, we've got the world's soundest banking system. We've had many years of surplus, which has helped us pay down our debt, which other countries like the U.S. have not been able to do. And a couple of the items in the silver lining here is a significantly reduced Canadian dollars, which should help manufacturers in Ontario to sell more goods into the U.S., and also lower interest rates that we've put in place in a coordinated effort with countries around the world, which will now make it less expensive for Canadians to get mortgages, car loans, things like that. So a couple of those areas should be a positive for us in the short to medium term.
Tom Vassos is a business instructor with Rotman School of Management. Mr. Vassos, appreciate your time, sir.
Thanks.